Hello, innovators, and welcome to another episode of the Heitland Show, where I connect the dots of innovation and entrepreneurship with my guests. Today's guest is a multicultural businesswoman with a passion for growth, creative, and digital transformation. She spent the first half of her career as an entrepreneur, building a successful branded content agency. The last 15 years, she focused on digital marketing, data strategy, and digital business transformation, driving innovation and bottom line growth for Fortune 500 companies. Marina is awarded Age Woman to Watch 2016, PwC Woman to Watch 2017 and 18, and Top 100 Leading Women Spain in 2021. She's the CEO of McCann WorldGroup Spain. Please welcome to the show Marina Specht. Hello, Marina. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hello, Jens. Thank you very well. Thanks for having me.
Looking forward to our conversation. I have so many questions to you because you have such a huge experience, and I almost don't know where to start. But the best thing, I guess, is where we can start is telling a little bit about your stories. Like, who are you, and how did you get to where you are today?
Okay. Happy to do that, but I'm warning you, I like to ask questions myself. So maybe I'll start asking you questions. Once a journalist, always a journalist. And I have always thought asking questions is more important than giving answers. So my background, I was born in Argentina in a very international German family in the 60s. I was raised in Buenos Aires, but then also in Sao Paulo, in Brazil, in a very entrepreneurial, very creative family of as I said, very, very open-minded, liberal, sort of global citizens kind of parents that I had, who, from the very start, I would say they gave me so much confidence in myself. They gave me so much support and such a strong belief that the sky was the limit, that, there was no such thing as a glass ceiling for me. And I'm saying this because as a woman leader today, and after, 35 years of a career, a very, very good, very successful, very happy career, and so much talk these days about women empowerment and leadership, I think it all starts at home. And it all starts in the very early years. So before we actually speak about professions and careers, it is very important to signify how important my family and my parents have been to give me the confidence that I could do whatever I wanted and that I could pursue the passions I wanted to pursue, provided I cared for the others, I cared for the environment, I had a system of beliefs and of values, which they also gave me. And that is just so valuable, right? And so important. There is no university that can make up for that, no master's degree, no nothing. So that's why I mentioned that. So I as I said, I went to international schools, and I went then to university in the UK. My dad, as I said, was an entrepreneur and a filmmaker, and he built a very large and successful business of photography equipment and film equipment at the time in South America. I refused to take over my dad's business, and that was a very big challenge and a very big family argument because I'm the eldest daughter. And so he expected me to continue running the family business, and I refused and became a journalist. Because I have a very powerful, strong, talented father. And I felt the need to step out of his shadow and to really, fulfill my dream. And my dream was about asking questions and telling stories. And I was driven by curiosity as much as I am today. So that hasn't changed. And so I did study, and I have to say my dad was wise and generous enough to say, okay, you're not taking over the family business, and I'm going to support you to study whatever you want. And so I did go into journalism. And I started my career in journalism in a news agency. I started my first job ever was in Cologne, Germany, at the German news agency DPA, which I think no longer exists, or maybe it does, but not relevant in today's world. Journalism, of course, the entire profession is no longer the profession I learned, or I thought we would practice. And then I was very lucky at a very young age to be hired by a English language daily newspaper in Buenos Aires, owned at that time, by the way, by another news agency, which was UPI, United Press International, out of the US, to cover the Falkland War at age 23. And that was, wow, well, quite an experience for a young girl. And after that, I decided that I wanted to go into human rights journalism. And I did that in that same paper that I was. And I spent 2 or 3 years uncovering human rights atrocities in the back end of the military regime in Argentina. And that was incredible for me. It was eye-opening. It was, in search of truth, with a capital T. Funnily enough, if you think of it, I ended up my career in McCann. McCann's mantra and our positioning for the last 150 years has been truth well told. So how interesting that I started in search of truth, and I ended up in a very large, creative organization, commercial creative organization that lives and pursues, truth well told. So I thought that was interesting. So after human rights journalism, I was by coincidence given the opportunity to enter business journalism, and I did that, and I moved to Europe for good, and I started contributing to the FT, and I started contributing to El País and to a number of publications, and also to Ad Age, which was a specialized advertising publication, very prestigious one. And by the way, it was by writing for Ad Age that I discovered brands, and I discovered marketing, advertising, and all of these things. I remember that the international editor of Ad Age walked into the FT newsroom and said, "We're looking for someone who can cover Europe." And I was like, I always had my hand up for everything, right? That hasn't changed either, by the way, 30 years later. But I had my hand up and I said, yeah, the only thing is, I'm happy to do it. The only thing is, and I speak 5 languages, and I would, write in those 4 or 5 languages. So that was handy as well. But, I said to her, I don't know anything about advertising. And she said, oh, it doesn't matter. You can learn it in 3 days, So that's how I got into advertising, by writing for Ad Age. And I fell in love with brands and with advertising and with creative work, in addition to journalism. I also anchored a daily TV show at the time. I worked for the FT, had a daily program that was produced out of Zurich. It was called the European Business Channel. It was a daily morning business program. By the way, doing TV for 2 years as an anchor woman is very good training for whatever you do in life later. Fantastic training for, presentation skills, the skill to be able to tell a story in 80 seconds, is really good training. So I did that. And then eventually I started, as I was doing business stories and writing on some of the big businesses in Europe, etc., and their brands and their performance and their evolution and their innovations, I started realizing that brands lacked content, and that brands were only promoting their products by pushing commercial messages at people so that people would buy their product. But I felt that that was very limited. And I thought, wouldn't it be an idea to, create content that people would around related indirectly to brands, but not salesy content, real content, interesting content, entertaining content, intelligent content. So wouldn't it be an idea to create content that people would love so much that you would attract an audience and ultimately that audience would buy your product? That, of course, today is called branded content or branded entertainment. At that time, that we're speaking the 80s, that word didn't exist, that concept didn't exist. And but if you think of it, it was a concept that was quite a bit ahead of its time. So I decided that that was a true opportunity. And because I also, by then, I had realized that journalism was fascinating, probably one of the most marvelous professions on earth for someone who's curious and someone who wants to be a generalist and learn about many things, but have something new and thrilling happen in your life every single day. But you were never going to get rich with that profession. So I thought, well, how about I start my own business, try to create beautiful content for brands in parallel to being a journalist, right? This is what today we call native advertising. But of course, then no one had that, definition in their minds. So I did that, and I founded my branded content agency called Reporter in the 80s, in the mid 80s. And well, I was never bound by geography. I had by then established my base, so to speak, in Madrid. But I'm a global citizen, as I told you. I speak 5 languages, and I knew Europe very well. So I always had a vision to work globally out of Spain. Now that may not sound innovative to you now, and you would say, well, that's normal, right? Everybody builds global businesses out of everywhere. Yeah, not in the 80s in Spain. I mean, Spain had hardly joined the European Union in 1992, and I started my business in 1991. So, quite frankly, it was very, Spain was not your global Spain, your international Spain of today. By the way, I made a mistake. I said it joined in 92. It joined in 86, not in 92. 92 was the World Trade Fair in Seville. So the expo, the global expo in Seville. So yeah, I started the business, and it quite rapidly became a very successful agency. And we worked, I was so lucky to win the trust of incredible clients, and I started working for IBM. I started working for BMW, later for Mini, and for really amazing clients, for Philips, and for American Express, for many amazing clients that actually valued high quality content for their brands and that understood the concept, right? And it was wonderful because it was a time when, we had very nice budgets to commission great photography, great video. It was high quality work. We could commission amazing writers because, by the way, these brands had much nicer budgets than the media, right? Mm-hmm. And so we could actually do what I was dreaming to do, which was incredibly good content. I'm a firm believer in specialism, Jens. I believe that it is very, very important to, never give up this pursuit of excellence, this obsession for good work, this obsession for drilling into it until the finest detail, right? And this very high standard of quality. And that's what I built the business on a product, on a service that was so good and so outstanding. We never did any marketing. I mean, we just won clients because one client spoke to another, and that's how we became famous as an agency. I never went out hunting for clients. Not really. We had so much work, we could hardly cope with the growth, and this is how it was for a good 12 years, 10, 12 years. And then we're now speaking the 90s and the late 90s. And I was very curious about the internet. The internet was just born. I was very curious. I started building my first websites. This was great because I started so early in digital that I could allow myself to make a lot of mistakes and to learn from mistakes, and to start understanding how you would convey stories from an offline world into this, very early website world, right? Later on, I had the same experience when Facebook was born. I was working on social media right from the very beginning. And that was another challenge for a brand storyteller. Like, how do you really build audiences and engage people and tell stories? And, I think in that time, we learned many of the things that later became obvious, which is that you cannot just take stories and, so to speak, adapt them to all the media, because that's just not true. A podcast is a podcast, an article is an article, a video is a video. I mean, you can recreate your creative concept and your story, but you can't just adapt like that. So it was an incredibly intense, beautiful time that we had with my own agency. I mean, I enjoyed every single day of it.
And after you have finished, so first it's an incredible story. it's really heads up. So after you basically developed your own company and then moved on, what led you to go into the corporate world? What was the trigger?
Well, the trigger was, again, my curiosity. So I realized that, as a friend of mine who was a very well-known, actually a legend in the ad industry, he shall remain unnamed because he doesn't like to be named, but I will tell you, he said something to me. He said, Marina, the thing is, you make the most beautiful dog tails on the planet, but you haven't cracked the dog.
Huh.
And I was like, oh my God. So I realized that it was true. I was making amazing content, but I hadn't understood the depth of data segmentation. How are you actually gonna, at that time we used to do audiences, remember? That is now dead, but we used to do audiences, segments of marketing, right? Before we started developing personas and stuff. But so I realized that what was the point of creating amazing content if you didn't get the entire approach right from the beginning? So you had to understand the one-to-one. You had to forget the masses and go for the one-to-one, go for the individual, go for the segmentation, go for the niche, And so I really fell in love with marketing, and specifically with direct marketing, and specifically then with digital direct marketing, right? Which became digital marketing. And that is number one. And number two is that I always wanted to work globally. I didn't want to stay in Spain. I built a very successful business in Spain and out of Spain, and I had some international clients, a lot of Spanish clients, but I wanted to move on and think big. And in order to think big, you have to be brave and engage in partnerships that will make you bigger as a person, even if you don't control everything. So until then, I had controlled 100% of everything. It was my company.
Yeah.
I had no partners in my company. It was my business, 100%. And I thought that maybe if I engaged with a group that worked and that did sophisticated marketing and digital marketing and content work globally, I could learn a lot. It was really my curiosity. My personal curiosity was the driver. And so one day, a gentleman cruised up in my office like that, asked for a meeting with me. This one will be named. He's very famous. His name is Stan Rapp. And Stan Rapp was at that time the CEO of a company called MRM, McCann Relationship Marketing. It was actually named McCann Relationship Marketing. Then later it became MRM, part of McCann. And he visited me. He came from New York just to see me. And he said, listen, I've been watching your work, what you're doing for brands, etc. It's incredible work. You have an incredible understanding of content and of brands and how to build engagement with people through high quality content. How would you see if we partnered with you and you helped us develop this business and this service globally, and also helped us acquire other company like yours around the globe? So I sold at the beginning a stake, not the totality, just a stake of my company to them. And I entered this deal and it was fantastic. I spent 2 years buying other branded content companies for them, developing a global branded content offering for McCann WorldGroup, together with Stan Rapp, with Kirk Shafitz, with a lot of people who were amazing. Pam Larrick, I mean, amazing people. I also have to tell you that they were investing heavily in digital, which only fueled my curiosity even more, right, about this whole thing. And so at some point, they said, well, would you just park your business for a moment and would you run our digital company in Europe, which we're going to call MRM, and it's going to become the digital pillar of McCann WorldGroup, and would you build that for us in Europe? And I thought, how interesting to build an end-to-end digital marketing practice. And so that's what I did. I dedicated the next 10 years to MRM, to building MRM in Spain, in Europe, etc. And I lived in the UK, I lived in Madrid, off and on. I've always been, the last 15 years of my life pre-COVID have been 230 days of flying a year, 230 days of business travel. So you wonder, where was I really based? I don't know. I mean, theoretically, I was based in Madrid, but my family was based in Madrid, that's for sure. But I was like moving around, right? And working globally with a base in Madrid, which, by the way, why not? I keep saying Madrid is the new London. It has the same talent as London. It has incredibly talented people. And it has two large competitive advantages over London. One is the days of sunshine, which is why everybody wants to live here. And the joie de vivre too, because, Madrid is Madrid, right? Yeah. In terms of quality of life. And you know that because you moved to Spain. And the other is, the competitiveness of the pricing and the hourly rates, which is on average 35 to 40% lower than the UK or Germany. So a very big competitive advantage for building a global hub that could work out of Madrid, right? A proposition to work out of Madrid. So that was how I moved into the corporate world. And then I have to tell you that I didn't just move into the corporate world. I moved into McCann WorldGroup. And that McCann WorldGroup is a very special, very particular holding company that has a culture that actually loves entrepreneurs. And this is very important, Jens. I would not have survived here. I would not have stayed so long if I had not had the freedom to continue being an entrepreneur, but inside McCann WorldGroup. And this is actually what I am. I feel today like an entrepreneur in a corporate environment. And this is a kind of, culture that, as I said, is very much encouraged within IPG and within McCann, which is why it became my home,
Yeah. And that maybe, at least for me, is working with a lot of companies myself. That's maybe already, like you said as well before, is ahead of time. This having an entrepreneurial culture, which is, I mean, it's not like the last 5 years. I guess it's already 10 years or even longer. For me, this is the future where organizations need to go and enable, especially the young people who are growing up now, who are digital native from the get-go, getting them into the space of, hey, develop yourself, go and figure it out,
I
instead of,
could,
hey, I'm
yeah,
your boss.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I think the entrepreneurial spirit and the possibility that you give people to really be themselves and develop themselves and come up with all sorts of propositions, right? Is, by the way, the only way to attract the most talented workforce of the 21st century. Is the only way. You have to have other things too, by the way. You have to have, in addition to all of this, you have to have other things on top. You really have to have values. You have to have a purpose, but a true purpose, and you have to live by it. You have to, have a culture that really takes inclusion and diversity serious and practices, you have to have a sustainable approach to the planet and to society. You have to all these things. But what you said is really, really true. So in that sense, I feel that, McCann has always sort of had that. It's a very competitive company, but it's a company that really, really puts people first and really loves or has a sort of they have a true entrepreneurial spirit, which is why I think so many entrepreneurs have stayed in McCann. I'm not the only one.
If you look back, I'm always thinking about what makes people so successful as they are. So there's kind of a flavor, a drive. And that's, for me, it's like, if I would ask you, what is your superpower that made you successful, starting as a child? Is there anything where you say that's a red thread?
I think one is that I am really afraid of nothing. That's the truth. So I constantly put myself in uncomfortable situations for myself. I constantly put myself out of my comfort zone. And by the way, I have a mantra, and this maybe has to do with this as well. I think you have to dedicate at least 30% of your time every week, 20-30% of your time every week to developing and learning things that you don't know. And you have to, as a business, you have to, and I have this rule of thumb in McCann WorldGroup, which is particularly in MRM, our digital agency, 30% of what we are doing, selling, offering to clients proactively at any given moment in time needs to be stuff that a year and a half ago, we didn't know that it existed. So you have to constantly be ahead of the curve. You have to invest in things that you have an instinct for, that you are developing, you're learning, you're curious, you're researching. But that means you have to not be afraid to do pilots. It won't be perfect, but it's better done than perfect, to paraphrase Zuckerberg, right? Yeah. And I think that was always the case, even when I was 25 years old. The difference from then to today is that now it is, I think, approximately 150 times faster than then. The degree of the speed of change is what is faster. But it was always important not to be afraid, to put yourself out your to try out things. We do a lot of testing and market tests for clients. I hate testing. I think you have to do testing for clients because it's part of the professional thing you have to do. But I think if the world was run by tests, Steve Jobs would never have developed the iPod, let alone the iPhone, right? Because when you ask people, when you ask people what they want and you develop things only on the basis of what people want because you want to go safe, people don't know what they want.
Yeah.
So you just have to, and today we have so much data. We gather normally in any given week, we work with, 2,000 data sources on an ongoing basis in McCann. And, we collect what we call big data and thick data, and we use Python to program, algorithms that will give us predictive analysis of not what people want today, but what people will want next, what they will talk about next, what is the next evolution. So today we have so much more data than we used to have, but you have to also trust your instinct, Jens. You have to trust your instinct and you have to stay true to yourself and just not be afraid. This is, I think, one very important pillar of, call it, success, right? I mean, what is success? I mean, it's a word that I don't use very much and I don't believe in it very much. I think it's a very relative concept. What is success, right? But yes, I think not being afraid is very important. And that, of course, also goes hand in hand with something I told you at the beginning, which is self-confidence, right? And which is something that if it is given to you as a child from a very young age, that is an enormous competitive advantage, right? The other thing is, of course, as I told you, curiosity. It has been very helpful for me in my entire career, and I foster it. I nurture it. I get nervous if I am not in any week, curious about something that I don't understand. I start getting nervous. I start getting nervous about being too comfortable or to doing too many repetitive things. Because I know that if I only do repetitive things, then I'm not venturing myself into new things, And it's important to never stop doing that. That is important. Another big important pillar, well, I think is human relationships, I mean, I love people, to be honest. I'm a people person. It has come easily to me to build strong relationships with my teams, my partner clients, my collaborators, the ecosystem of partners that I built. And this is very important because ultimately, given I have many times in my life, well, literally every year and a half, I'm venturing into something new. You have to find people who believe in you and who trust you. So you are building strong human ties. So people who have seen you repetitively launch new things and have seen that they can trust that you are a woman with a word, right? As we say in German, that's a German translation.
Yeah.
That you can see that this person is someone you can trust. Well, trust is everything, Jens. And my other big pillar for my career in my life has been trust. I have been very lucky to attract very, very brilliant people around me, much more brilliant than me. And I have managed to build ecosystems of people where people trust each other. and where they work together because they trust each other and because they have fun together and because they believe that they will build amazing things together. And this is true for employees, for clients, for everybody. So that's those are really the two or three things that I think are the red thread, and that no matter how much the world changes, that will still be very important.
Huh. I know you're tight on time, so I'm going to the last bigger question now. If you could work with a project that's impacting every human being on Earth, what project would you choose to work with and why?
Okay, well, I am personally and as a company, both, we are in a phase now where the last several years we have really evolved and started to take in the entire notion of ESG and the entire notion that capitalism and pure double-digit growth, as we have known it the last 40 years, just giving results to investors or to financial investors or financial stakeholders won't be enough. So we have to help brands brands and companies be given also, by the way, consumers are demanding from companies and brands to do that, to become these organisms that are able to not only pay back and make up for what they have destroyed, but also invent new solutions that will make both the planet and the society a better place. So we have a responsibility as companies and as brands to look at the world much more holistically and work in that direction. Okay, so if you ask me, I enjoyed very much that for example, the last 15 years, having worked in digital business transformation with big global clients, I enjoyed, and I still enjoy that. But that is no longer enough for me. For me today, it is about transformation, obviously digital driven. What else? I mean, transformation, but transformation with a purpose. Transformation that has to do with creating propositions that actually are propositions that help society and the planet, in addition to just generating a nice financial return and a strong double-digit growth, and selling products just like that. So if you ask me, I am very much enjoying and looking for brands that want to do meaningful transformation. Meaningful in that sense, right? And I would love to work on projects like that, because that means that marketing and brand building, then if we do that, wins a whole other dimension, gets a whole other dimension, and your work becomes work that you can be proud of in front of your 23-year-old kids. Because my kids are now 23 and 26. So I have two very demanding demanding and challenging observers of what I do. They are also my best focus group. They keep me real. They understand Gen Z. They help me understand Gen Z. And to me, it's very, very useful when I develop new projects to think, would this fly with my 23 and 26-year-olds? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the best internal focus group and a very quick one. Super good. How can people reach out to you, and where can people find you?
People can find me on LinkedIn. I'm as active on LinkedIn as I can be, given my very busy schedule. But I'm always there. People can find me on my email. I'm very open. I'm very easy to reach. As I said, someone who doesn't have my personal contact details can find me under Marina Specht in LinkedIn, and I respond to everyone. I'm a very active user of LinkedIn, but in a qualitative sense. I don't share private content on social media. I stopped doing that many years ago. But I think professionally, Twitter and LinkedIn, and of course all the other social channels, but given there is a limit of time, I have to say maybe a large portion of my social activity today is on LinkedIn and Twitter, because it's professionally related, right, content and interaction.
Marina, I have hundreds of more questions, but I know you're very, very busy, and I really appreciate your passion and learning from you. It was a pleasure having you on the podcast. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Jens. I encourage you to continue creating such valuable, interesting podcasts. When I first listened to one of your podcasts, that's why I decided I should dedicate 45 minutes to you. And it's been a pleasure. And I find your personal story even very, very inspiring. So I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you very much, Marina. Thanks for listening to today's episode. You will find the links and resources in the show notes of this episode. If you would like to support the podcast, the most impactful thing you can do is subscribing to the show on any of the podcasting platforms and give me a review. This will help me to reach more innovators around the world and bring some of you into the show. If you have any question to the guest or want to engage with me, feel free to reach out to me on social media and contact me there.